Hi, everybody. It is time to get started for today. My name is Luke Fry. I'm the Associate Director of Communication for the Better Business Bureau serving Connecticut. Thank you all for joining us today. And today it's a topic that we know that we have a lot of questions about. It's about the second round of PPP loans. So we appreciate everybody joining us today. And joining us today on our call is Gwendolyn Thames. She is the Deputy Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Economic and Community Development, and also Catherine Marks, who is the District Director of the SBA. These are two of the best people who can answer your questions about PPP. So please type them in the questions box as you have them, and they are going to try to answer them. So I'm going to turn it over to you two so that you can tell our accredited businesses about the next round of PPP loans.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm having a little bit of bandwidth issues today. But first and foremost, thank you, Luke, and the entire Connecticut Better Business Bureau organization for just your ongoing partnership, support, and leadership. Without strong partners such as yourselves, we would not be able to support our businesses and do what we've been able to do to help them sustain themselves and navigate all of the resources. So we all know our small businesses are the heart and soul of our local and state economy. And from the beginning of the pandemic, DCD on a state level has really been doing everything we can to keep our small businesses and our economy moving. With the limited resources that we've had, we've really prioritized state resources and providing capital to businesses so again they can sustain their organizations through this unprecedented economic downturn. And so I'm just going to give a couple of updates on kind of the state programs, and then I'm going to hand it off to Catherine Marks from the Connecticut SBA District Office so she can go into more detail and provide an overview of where we are relative to PPP. So on the state side, there was two big programs that we launched just before the new year in 2020. That was the Connecticut Care Small Business Grant Program. That was $50 million fund focused on our smallest of small businesses. And we had over 18,000 applications. And to date, we are close. We have funded 8,000 small businesses with a one-time grant of $5,000, and we're working on 2,000 more to close those grants and fund those small businesses by the end of this month. So our goal at the end of the day would be to deploy the $50 million and provide upwards of 10,000 businesses a one-time grant of $5,000. The second program that we launched, again, at the latter part of 2020 was our Connecticut Business Recovery Grant. This was focused on more of our small to medium-sized businesses. There was no application required. We really used our sister agency, DRS, the Department of Revenue Services, to really look at and gather data on hand from their agency to determine eligibility. We were heavily focused on food, accommodations, retail, or what have you, and those small businesses that really had sales and use tax, room occupancy tax, sales and admission and dues tax, if you will. Again, we use that data to determine eligibility, which is why we weren't necessarily able to have an application. And we landed on probably about a pool of 2,000 businesses that were eligible based on our criteria. That was $35 million. A majority of that money has already been dispersed as of the beginning of this week. Of the $35 million, 34.7 million of businesses had actually cashed their grants. And so again, really good progress there. We were able to, again, fund approximately 2,000 businesses. Last but not least, Just yesterday, the Lieutenant Governor and I announced a new partnership with the Connecticut Women's Business Development Council, and that is really a private sector partnership where the WBDC was able to raise over $500,000 through the banking community, corporates, and philanthropy, and DECD is matching that dollar for dollar. And the goal is to provide micro grants to women-owned businesses who have been disproportionately impacted due to the pandemic, and really supporting their businesses pivot and really positioning them for success in a post-pandemic economy, if you will. Because again, we know that if we can get that grant capital, not debt capital, to these businesses, they can recover faster and create jobs back faster to our economy. So those kind of, 3 programs are the latest and greatest, and just updates on where we are relative to our state response for small businesses. And again, all these programs were really designed to be a bridge. And that shot in the arm during kind of these long, cold winter months, as we anticipated the larger stimulus package that was coming from Washington. We had been waiting for that next round of stimulus for some months, and we knew many businesses were struggling. And so again, the state really wanted to provide that bridge and that shot in the arm, recognizing that we were going to get some new stimulus money coming. And so Catherine is going to talk more briefly about, again, the next round of PPP and other opportunities that are coming, because now we're really focusing our efforts and partnering with SBA to get the word out about the federal funding that's available for small businesses. And also, just to further that point, now that we have a new administration with the Biden-Harris administration, Biden has already, put out there his rescue package, which is upwards of $2 trillion. And then also he's planning the second phase of a longer term recovery package coming sometime probably in the spring. So I think there's a lot of positive momentum. I think we can all kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel to some degree, especially with the vaccinations, and kind of really increasing getting our communities vaccinated. And so now it's just like, how can we get to that warmer, those warmer months and that warmer season, where we can all kind of get out and about and back again and get to some level of normalcy. So again, with all these efforts, I think we can all see the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're just forging ahead to really get our businesses through these next couple of months to warmer weather. Catherine?
Excellent. Thank you, partner. Glenn, would you like to talk, or shall I just start with my presentation?
It's all you.
Okay. Thank you, Gwendolyn, and it's always a pleasure to join you. And this is an instance where we are partnering. The federal and state are partnering to get the message out. There's a lot of detail that we have to go through. And I'm going to primarily talk about the reopening of the PPP. PPP is the Paycheck Protection Program. That has reopened. It started last week. It reopened due to the fact that the president signed an economic relief package on December 27th, 2020, and the reopening of the Paycheck Protection Program was just one arm. That's what I'm going to focus on. If folks have other questions regarding some of the other implications in that package, we can certainly talk about them in the Q&A. Can you see my screen? Excellent. So if you don't know us, we are the SBA in Connecticut. We are the federal arm with a field office of the federal arm of the Small Business Administration. We are here our mission is to help small businesses start, grow, and right now recover from the incredible disaster that we're all dealing with. Again, I'm going to primarily talk about the relaunch of the PPP. All the information in this webinar is due to guidance as of January 14th. Our guidance continually gets updated with work with the Treasury, but we would like to give you the most up-to-date information. First and foremost, very important to know about the bill that was signed. The bill that was signed has some real specific set-asides and some real specific requirements that we are going to make sure that we help the hardest hit small businesses, and particularly the hardest hit small businesses in our underserved communities. We're doing a lot of outreach, minority outreach, women outreach, veteran outreach, but you'll see in a lot of instances, you're going to see the requirements and the differences in the first PPP are really going for the smaller businesses, the most hardest hit. So you're going to see a lot more requirements in the program. Key dates. We already went through a lot of this to make sure that we put money right in those communities. We first opened it up to the small community banks. Again, there is set aside money there that they will be able to access billions of dollars just through those small banks. But for the entire state of Connecticut, all lending institutions were able to start putting in applications last Tuesday for both first and second draw PPP loans. And I'll explain that terminology. But when does it end? All of this applications need to be in at the end of March, or if the money runs out sooner, then the program will end. But the deadline is March. So make sure you get your financials ready and talk to a lender or talk to one of our resource partners to get the help that you deserve to keep on going. So let's talk about some of our, what is the first draw? What does that mean? Not everyone last spring was able to get a PPP loan for a number of reasons. I'm working with a retailer in Hartford who just didn't want to take on more debt, didn't understand the forgiveness aspects of it. Those folks can come now and reapply for the first draw PPP. So if you didn't get a PPP loan last spring, you can now apply for where we're calling the first draw PPP. So that includes all of the original eligibility, so nonprofits, sole proprietors, LLCs. We've increased the coverage eligibility expenses, and now you can select your covered period. If you did get a PPP, a first draw, there are very small circumstances where you could increase your original loan amount. So that's where it's important to go talk to your lender. But if you didn't get a first round PPP last spring, important to know, you can go to your lender today and talk to them about an application to get the money that you need. The program is called a PPP loan, but let's make sure we understand. If you apply for the loan properly, and if you use that money properly, it is 100% forgiven. So the loan turns into a grant. So if you use the money properly, even though it's a PPP loan, that's what you're applying for, it should be a grant to help you recover from COVID-19. So again, we increased the eligibility as well. So the new eligibility includes housing cooperatives, some destination organization, marketing organizations, some news organizations, and very importantly, 501c6 organizations, which are mainly chambers of commerce. But there's new eligibility there. So if you couldn't apply last spring, please make sure to see if you then can apply now. Again, same as last spring. Partnerships, corporations, 501c3 nonprofits. So those things haven't changed. We just added some new entities into the mix. When you apply for the first draw, you're going to be applying based on the ramifications of the first draw last spring. So that includes your size requirements, and that includes the loan amounts. So those are higher loan amounts. So everything about the first draw, you must comply with the size standards, and there's certain limitations. But the exciting thing is that there's more money for the second draw. And I can tell you that last week, people in Connecticut, businesses have been receiving second draw loans. So what is the difference between the second draw loan? First off, the amount of employees is smaller. So in the first draw, the maximum amount of employees was 500. Now in the second draw, that's 300. But most importantly, you have to show a 25% decrease in gross receipts. So the legislation and the guidelines are intended to make sure that this money is used indeed for businesses that have been hurt. So you have to prove that you've had a 25% reduction in gross receipts. The total loan amount has decreased to $2 million. And for our friends who are suffering in the food and accommodations services, you actually have a larger ratio to get more money to help you. It's 3.5 times your average payroll costs. Again, these are SBA guaranteed loans that are 100% forgivable if you use them properly, but you have to go to your borrower, to your financial institution to get these loans. If you don't have one, if you're not working with one, on the SBA website, we have a list. So you can go onto our list and we'll show you which institutions in Connecticut are indeed taking applications. Other instances, caveats for the second draw. If you're going for a second draw loan, you first have to have used all your money from the first draw or prove that you will be using all the money for your first draw. And I've already mentioned that you have to have 300 employees or less, and that you have to show a 25% reduction in revenue. And then some important new improvements to the PPP Forgiveness. So if you're a small business that received a PPP loan, we hope that it's going to be 100% forgiven. Some of the changes in the Economic Aid Act include that your EIDL advances will no longer be deducted. What is EIDL? That's Economic Injury Disaster Loan. Those are advances were some of the first things that came out last spring, and those are no longer taken from your forgiveness payment. Really important is that the PPP loan money was never taxable, but now you can deduct the amount, you can deduct the expenses that you use the money for. So that's a very important to small businesses as they are closing out their calendar year 2020. Again, we've increased eligibility expenses, and we have, this slide says that it's coming soon. We have now simplified the form for all forgiveness $150,000 or less. So if your PPP loan is $150,000 or less, you just have a very short form to fill out for forgiveness. That doesn't mean you don't have to have your documentation at home. It just means that the application is very simplified. So that's good news for a lot of our borrowers. And again, what to do now? If you think that you are eligible for the first draw or the second draw, contact your lender. You don't have to use the same lender that you used the first time. It is very positive to do that, because I think the process will go faster for you, but that, you know, that's up to you. That's your choice. Again, if you don't have a lender, we have a lender match problem. And Glendon and I always talk about our resource partners in care in Connecticut, both our traditional and non-traditional resource partners. She mentioned the WBDC, that has 3 locations in Connecticut, and that has advisors and help for small businesses. We have many more. We have the Connecticut Small Business Development Center that has a point person in every single chamber throughout the state. We have SCORE, which are experts who offer to mentor businesses, and we have the Women's Business Center at the University of Hartford. And then we have our non-traditional resource partners like SAMA, the Spanish American Merchants Association, the Black Business Alliance, HEDCO, and many others who are really stepping up to make sure that the small businesses get the help they need, get the resources that they need to get these applications in. Right now, as of last week, we have secured loans up to $500 million, pardon me, 4,787 loans. We need to increase that. We need to get these loans processed, get the information out to people. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be on this webinar. And some more information, here is the team at the Connecticut SBA. We will be able to either help you or guide you in the right direction. So thank you very much. Happy to be here. Shop small and get your vaccine.
Thank you, Catherine. Joni, are there any questions that can be answered at this time?
Yeah, I just have one. Give me just a moment because my screen locked up. Okay, there we go. The PPP Forgiveness application calls for a number of employees at the time of the PPP application and at the time of forgiveness application. What is the effect on the change in employees at the end of the covered period versus applying for forgiveness at a later date?
Well, it doesn't, I'll take that one, Glenn. When you apply for forgiveness, you would still, I believe, use your the end of your covered period. But why doesn't that person just contact me directly and I'll get them a direct answer? Because you can apply for forgiveness up until next year. You have a long time to apply for forgiveness.
Okay, so far that's the only question we've had.
The only thing, if I can just jump in, because I think I missed submitting or telling folks the website for the new women-owned focus program on the equity match. So that program is being run by the Connecticut Women's Business Development Council. And so for information related to that program, you can go to their website, www.ctwbdc.org, www.ctwbdc.org.
We do have another question. How is the average monthly payroll calculated? Can you use quarterly form 941?
Let me get out my application form right here. Can they describe to me what form did they just ask for?
Quarterly form 941.
And that's to calculate their average payroll cost, not their so what can count as payroll is salary, wages, commissions, cash tips equivalent, payment of vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave. It actually has allowance for severance or dismissal. Payment for employee benefits, including group health or group life, disability, vision, or dental insurance, including insurance premiums and retirement. For a independent contractor or sole proprietor, to calculate your payroll cost, it's wages, commissions, income, and net earnings for self-employment or similar. The other non-allowable uses that are non-payroll are mortgage interest payments, rent payments, utility payments, interest payments, or other kind of debt forgiveness, some covered operational expenses, covered property damage if someone had property damage due to the unrest, covered supplier cost, and covered worker protection expenditures. So I hope that answers that person's question.
Okay, I do have a follow-up question for the same person. It's asking, how is the average monthly payroll? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped right over it. Over what time period? Is it annual only?
Time period for the to calculate it?
Yes.
It's 12 months. Using 2019 or 2020 or 12 months.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another question that came in. What does a small business need to submit to show 25% decrease in revenue? Is the period the entire 2020 year?
No. So demonstrating, and pardon me, I'm reading here because I want to make sure that I get it correctly. So pardon me looking down. I just don't have all of this memorized. So businesses that are operating for the whole year for 2019, they would compare gross receipts for Q1 through Q4 of 2020 compared to the same quarter of 2019. And businesses that were not operating in Q1 or Q2 of 2019, but operating in Q3 or Q4 would then use Q3 or Q4 any quarter to compare with Q3 or Q4 of 2020. And if this person would like me to explain if the business started in 2019, I can continue, but I don't want to confuse everyone. So the basic answer is you compare a quarter of 2020 to a quarter of 2019, but you have to compare the same quarter. So if you're using Q3 in 2019, you use Q3 in 2020, or you use Q2 in 2019, use Q2 in 2020. I hope that helps.
I have another one. If you received a PPP loan on the first draw, can you receive additional money? And what is the total amount that you can receive?
Right. Okay. A fantastic question. So there's two things that small business can do. One, they could go for the second draw. And just do a second draw. If they wanted to get more money for the first draw, there's a lot more requirements, and I would suggest that they call one of us to do that. But most people who did get a PPP loan in the spring have used up the money properly. They're going for a second draw PPP, particularly if they're in the food or accommodations industry, because there is a higher multiple to the payroll costs, and the second draw PPP will get them more money to help out their small business.
Okay, I have another question. It's a little complicated, so I'll try to go slow here. What if I show 25% growth, but it's due to an acquisition on January 1st, 2020, which resulted in the use of the PPP to hire additional staff and benefits who would have otherwise lost their jobs. I paid over $100,000 for the acquisition, but that's not growth, as I paid 1.5 times annual revenue for it.
Well, that certainly is a very specific question. And I I cannot answer that with an expertise that I'd feel comfortable. So that would be the instance where that small business should either contact us at SBA and we can help walk them through it, or contact their lender.
Okay, I have another one. If your gross receipts are only 23% loss, but you received a first draw PPP, so we are not eligible for the second draw, can we take additional monies on the first draw?
Very, very specific instances that you'd have to talk to your lender about, but they are absolutely correct. If it's even 24%, if it's not 25%, you can't go for the second draw. The only thing that I would talk to that small business owner is, you know, can you look at another quarter to quarter comparison? That would be my question. So when they try to go back for more money for the first draw, you know, they're still going to have to use the payroll calculation. So is there new information there in that payroll calculation that wasn't available in their first draw?
I don't see any more questions coming in. I think that may have been our last one.
So can I just take one more moment here?
Sure.
Those were fantastic questions, and they really really honed in on just how much more how there's an extra layer of complication or extra layer of requirements in this second draw, and I just can't stress enough, our resource partners in Connecticut are free. They are free resources. The SBDC, the the Small Business Development Center, though, that is free advice, business advice that folks can get to help them with the application. It's the Women's Business Development Council out of Stamford that has multiple locations in the state. It's the Women's Business Development Center at the University of Hartford. They all have online presence, including SCORE, which is a group of experts that are volunteers that offer their help in finances and marketing. So these are all free advice. So make sure to take advantage of it. A lot of these are having hotlines, and they'll have a business expert, you know, walk you through. The problem with trying to answer those very nuanced questions, you know, on a call like this is I don't see their financials laid out, all of their financials. A business analyst at our resource center, you know, may be able to help the small business that only had 23%, you know, maybe look at a different quarter or some more other options. So, you know, it's great that you hopped on the webinar, and it's great that you get more information. But without seeing everything laid out in front, it's very difficult to give, you know, financial advice as to the best direction. The best direction is to go to our resource partner, start the application process, you know, show them your, you know, where you are at and what your needs are. But, you know, with that limited amount of information, it's very difficult to give a very specific answer, because the second draw PPP does have some additional requirements, most specifically that 25% reduction.
And to your point, Catherine, with kind of the second draw, and as I understand it, because I know there was a few questions relative to this, was it's that, you know, 25%, you know, year over year loss, right? But then also you can compare it to any quarter, right? So that wasn't necessarily in the first round. They didn't provide that flexibility in the first round, but in this new iteration of PPP and then the second or the first draw and second draw, they're allowing you to compare it to any quarter, year over year.
So the first draw never had, never asked to show a reduction in revenue or gross receipts. So the first draw just wanted you to show your payroll expenses. So that's why it's really meant to it's really meant to assist the hardest hit businesses, because there actually is now a requirement to show need.
Correct. Are there any other questions in the chat?
No, I don't see any more.
All right, I guess as a last call, anybody who is joined in today, if you do have a question, please type that in your questions box while we have Gwendolyn and Catherine here to answer them. We also had a general question about a person who's a self-employed travel agent. They got the 2020 disaster loan and they were asking if they would be eligible for PPP. Again, that's probably a broad question, Catherine.
That's a very good question. So if the person on the call received an EIDL loan, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan last year, they can still get a PPP loan. So the answer is yes, they can still get one.
All right, I don't see any other questions, so I don't want to hold either of you two ladies up. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know our accredited businesses really appreciate you two answering their questions about these PPP loans, and it can be dire for a person who owns a small business to be able to continue business, into 2021, into 2022, hopefully, after an event like this. So we appreciate everything you do, Catherine, and you do, Gwendolyn, for all of our small businesses here in Connecticut, as the Better Business Bureau does as well. So thank you for your time today, and we hope to talk to you again about a better, more positive topic, hopefully in the future.
Thank you, Luke
Thank
and
you,
team. My pleasure, anytime.
Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Bye.